Hello, everyone, and welcome to Grounded Health and Wellness. My name is Kate, and today I wanted to talk to you about practices in our yoga asana that are cooling for the body. So, these are really important to integrate into our yoga practice if we're battling with a little bit of excess Pitta Dosha, so that fire and water element. But it's also important to consider when we are in summer season. So, regardless of where you're living, we're kind of ebbing and flowing with nature. And we want to incorporate that as well in our yoga practice. So, kind of five postures that I like to lean on a little bit more during the summer season. And also, just generally, if things are feeling a little overheated, either physically or mentally. So, I'm a Pitta Vata constitution, so I have to be very mindful of if kind of Pitta is getting pushed out of balance a little bit more, I might be leaning on these practices more often. So the first one, which I think is maybe a fan favorite if you're new to yoga or maybe if you've been practicing for a long time, but Shavasana or corpse pose. So this is when we are finding a comfortable position. Traditionally, it's practiced on your back, and the arms are just alongside the body, and the legs or the legs and the feet rather, are just a little bit wider than hip width distance apart. So there's ease in the pelvis. So this posture is very cooling for the body. We are resting. We're also in one straight line with kind of skull and neck and spine all the way down towards our toes. So from an energetic perspective, things can move very freely in the body. So I always say to students or clients of mine that if they find that kind of life is a little overwhelming or perhaps their body's feeling really run down, sometimes just a 5-minute practice of Shavasana can do the trick. So if you're still incorporating a movement practice and you get to the end of class and you come to Shavasana, my recommendation here would be take a little bit extra time in Shavasana. So if you're only maybe grabbing a few minutes here or there, that's usually the structure of the class. Yoga classes here in North America, they usually save on average maybe 5 minutes for Shavasana. See if you can extend that a little bit longer and reap those benefits. All right. The second thing, or second posture rather, that is a beautiful one is Balasana or child's pose. So there are two ways that you can enjoy this posture. So one is with the knees together and bent, and the head is resting on the floor, and the arms are kind of sweeping around the legs, as you can see in this photo. Alternatively, you can take a wide-legged child's pose. So this is when we would fan the knees out wide, maybe as wide as your mat, big toes joined together, and we sink the hips back towards the heels. So I adore this posture. It sometimes can be more challenging for individuals or aging population because it can stress the knees a little bit until we start to kind of soften those hip flexors a bit more. So sometimes it's nice to put a little pillow or maybe some yoga blocks underneath your sitting bones to support your hips as you come back and as you hips will come closer to your heels. So the beautiful thing with this posture as well is we have this kind of rounding of the spine, regardless of which option you're taking. So this actually tones the adrenal glands that sit on top of our kidneys and kind of the mid-lower back. So as you're enjoying this posture and it's cooling to the body, we're also giving the nervous system this chance to really. I sometimes will say to students if we're working through a more vigorous or active sequence in the yoga class, I'll say, at any time, come down, take a child's pose and rest. And it just kind of recalibrates the body and the nervous system if that becomes to be a little bit challenging, or if you feel that that heat is rising too much here again, and we're losing that ease of breath. All right. So the next one I wanted to talk about was Uttanasana or forward fold. So forward bends in yoga are cooling by nature. So even things like downward facing dog, things where we are kind of inverting ourselves so that the head is lower than the hips. This is cooling to the body from an energetic perspective. So forward fold is wonderful. If you want to take more of a supported and a longer kind of stay in this posture, I love taking 2 yoga blocks, placing them on either side of my outer ankles, and resting the backs of my hands with my arms long on those blocks, so you have a little bit of support. Another thing that's beautiful is you could also use a bolster to support the head as you're folded over, depending on how close you are to the ground. You might have to build that bolster up a little bit with blocks so you bring the ground a little bit closer, but supporting the head in this forward fold is a beautiful option. I will mention as well, however, sometimes when we come into forward folds, I've worked with particular individuals who have concerns with blood pressure because after they've been forward for so long, then they start to come up, it can kind of tax the circulatory system and they feel a little bit dizzy or lightheaded. So always, as anything recommended here, you're always checking with the doctor before you explore any kind of physical practice. But usually in those cases, if I am working with someone who has an issue with that blood pressure variation, we're just taking maybe a graded rising back up instead of going straight from folding over to standing up. So maybe you come at half and then maybe 3/4 and then coming up. So the body has time to recalibrate. All right. Next one, and one of my ultimate favorites, is Supta baakanasan, or kind of cobbler's pose in a reclined position. So my favorite is to take a bolster and you can lie back on it from kind of the back of the hips, supporting your torso and your head. And then we're bending at the knees and connecting the soles of the feet. So this is very restorative. You can also take outer blocks or blocks, sorry, rather, to the outer legs to support that sensation of kind of the legs holding away from the ground. Sometimes we're consciously or unconsciously holding the legs, and that can put a little bit of extra pressure into the ligaments or the groin. So propping yourself where need be. But this is also very cooling for the body and the reproductive organs. So a great go-to posture as well for women who are menstruating. It is incredibly restorative. It encourages that apana of that energy movement to move downward through the body. So that is a great one to practice. I even find when I settle into bed at night, and if I'm kind of reading a few pages of my book before I go off to sleep, when I'm sitting in bed, I just bring the soles of my feet together and again, allow that softening in through the hips because I just find it so cooling and calming to the body. All right, your last one is going to be supported bridge pose. So bridge pose itself can be quite active because we're pressing down through the feet and activating quads here and kind of lifting. And it can also provide beautiful benefits for diaphragmatic breathing because we're creating that opening through the front body in that kind of almost say like a waterfall shape through the sternum. However, when we're supporting it, a pillow or a bolster, it's a beautiful way for the body to kind of still receive those benefits of opening the heart center and being able to cool the body down. But by having that added support, we're not creating that internal heat in the body for holding the hips up. So this is a great option. If you want to take it a step further when you're there in support, sometimes I'll guide my students to just gently lift their legs up in that posture. So kind of like a supported waterfall pose where the feet are above the heart, which can be very cooling for the body. So those are my top five. So just to go over those again quickly. So we have Shavasana or corpse pose, child's pose, or Balasana with those two options, whatever is more suitable for you. We have our forward fold posture, supported again if we want that for the head or the back of the hands. Supta baakanasan or cobbler's pose with feet together as we soften into the hips. And then your final one is supported bridge. So that's it for me. I hope you find some cooling benefits of incorporating these postures into your practice, and we'll see you next time.